at $69 billion.
Nice.
Let's just get that bad joke out of the way right now. The Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger is absolutely massive. Even a US district judge agreed. In her opinion, refusing to block the deal, Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley said, Microsoft's acquisition of Activision has been described as the largest in tech history. It deserves scrutiny. So what is Microsoft actually getting for its billions? Well, if you ask the FTC, it's getting a Death Star capable of obliterating any competitor. PlayStation. But instead of being fueled by kyber crystals, it's powered by Activision's apparently only game, Call of Duty. And if you think that sounds crazy,
oh shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
Well, so did Judge Corley. She ruled in Microsoft's favor, and honestly, it's a pretty scathing opinion. In it, she calls out the FTC for relying too much on PlayStation boss Jim Ryan's testimony, lambasts the FTC for inadvertently proving Xbox could lose money by making Call of Duty exclusive, and for cherry-picking the claim that the ZeniMax aka Bethesda deal is proof that Microsoft will withhold games, but Microsoft's decision to keep Minecraft multi-platform was deemed not relevant. Yeah, so the judge's opinion reads kind of like that guy in Billy Madison who said,
everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Now listen, this is probably going to be the biggest gaming news of 2023 unless somebody leaks GTA 6 again.
Here we go again.
That's why we're going deep. How the case came to be, the ultimate verdict, this frankly entertaining legal opinion, and what it all means for you, a video game loving person who owns a PlayStation, an Xbox, both, or hey, even neither. We're gonna get into it all. So let's break down how the FTC borked its case against the Xbox Activision deal. Now, before we get into the real thick of it, and trust me, it gets incredibly thick, like milkshake thick.
Let's go out for frosty chocolate milkshakes.
We need to acknowledge that this trial wasn't to explicitly kill the merger. The FTC went to court and failed to get a preliminary injunction, which would have bought themselves more time to investigate the deal. Now, that didn't mean there weren't real consequences for Microsoft here. This was potentially a do or die case. If the FTC proved successful, Microsoft might not have been able to close the deal by the agreed upon close date of July 18th, 2023, and would have to pay Activision Blizzard the small fee of $3 billion in breakup money and renegotiate the deal entirely.
Wasn't even enough to pay for the coffin.
All right, I'm gonna be honest. There was actually a world where this FTC fight against Microsoft could have been like the first Rocky vs. Creed fight. They could have gone the distance.
I'm gonna stop the fight. Hey, you ain't stopping nothing, man.
Instead, the FTC showed up to court with a total lack of understanding of the gaming space and through inept arguments turned this legal battle into something that was more like the Creed vs. Drago fight.
My God!
So let's get into the FTC's case against Xbox. In its complaint, the FTC asserts that the proposed acquisition will result in a combined firm with the ability and increased incentive to withhold or degrade Activision's valuable gaming content to undermine its competitors in multiple relevant markets. Now, if you're like me, you have to be asking, what the hell is a relevant market anyway? Well, let's start with the obvious one, consoles. Since this is an IGN video, I'm gonna assume most of you all know what a video game console is and that none of you work for the FTC, whose definition of the console market is absurdly narrow. Now, the FTC defined the console market in which Xbox operates as the high-performance console market, which to them consists only of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. The FTC deliberately excluded the Switch, as well as mobile games and PC gaming, which is already dominated by Microsoft. Now, the Switch may have industry-defining Zelda games and that neighborhood friendship simulator that kept us from walking into the sea during the global pandemic, thanks Tom Nook. But do you know what it didn't have enough of? Teraflops! Thanks to Nintendo's less capable hardware, the FTC doesn't feel like it's a true competitor. Aww. In reality though, narrowing Xbox's console competition works to the FTC's favor. With fewer competitors, the FTC could argue that Xbox's console market share is much larger, giving Microsoft much more market power to potentially leverage in anti-competitive ways.
Here's a candy bar. Oh, no, I'm withholding it. Look at me getting off.
To the FTC's credit, PlayStation boss Jim Ryan seemed to agree, acknowledging that Nintendo is in the console market, but wasn't a direct competitor of Sony, which is weird because the 170 hours I spent playing Zelda on my Switch recently were 170 hours that I wasn't playing PlayStation or Xbox. You know, like a competition. Still, that didn't stop Xbox boss Phil Spencer from garnering a ton of headlines when he proclaimed that Xbox lost the console war, saying Xbox's console has consistently ranked third of 3 behind PlayStation and Nintendo in sales. Phil made a killer blow to the FTC's argument here, but it wasn't enough. While the judge ultimately sided with Phil Spencer, saying in the court opinion, if the court was the final decision maker on the merits, it would likely find Nintendo Switch part of the relevant market, but it is not. This was ultimately a victory for the FTC and their only one. They succeeded in convincing the court that the Switch is not technically a part of the high-performance console market, with the court opinion saying, given the plethora of internal industry documents and the acknowledged differences, the FTC has met its preliminary injunction burden to show that the Switch is not included in the relevant market. They added, "Suck it, Switch." That's basically just judge speak for,
you are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Don't let Phil's crocodile tears over losing the console war fool you. Xbox knows that it lost, but Xbox's strategy is all about looking to the future of gaming. A future where it's potentially the dominant player in markets like subscription services. Hey, side note, it was really weird seeing figureheads of billion-dollar video game companies come off like upset, crying middle schoolers playing kickball. Like, Mom, he's cheating. No way, I can't cheat because I lose every time. I'm a big baby loser who never wins and I can't stop pooping my pants. Middle school was weird for me. Anyway, subscription services. Xbox Game Pass pretty much invented the modern video game subscription market with its Netflix-like service for gaming, which gives subscribers access to over 100 games for a monthly price. Act now. It's going pretty well for Xbox. They've already grown to 25 million subscribers, and that makes them the biggest player in the space. And like all subscription services, if Game Pass wants to continue to grow, it's going to need content. But not all content is made equal. See, the FTC straight up calls out the importance of AAA titles in growing a subscription service, saying a diverse array of AAA content that increases adoption and engagement gives a console or subscription service greater leverage in attracting additional content. And yo, let's be honest, developing AAA games is hard, and the FTC knows it. Microsoft knows it too, after struggling for years to maintain a steady stream of first-party AAA games that can compete with the likes of Sony and Nintendo's output. In the complaint, the FTC points out that there are only 4 independent game publishers that can create AAA games, Activision being one of them. So in the FTC's eyes, if Xbox absorbs Activision, it's effectively lessening competition. And in their complaint, the FTC said that Xbox could leverage its deep bench of first-party devs, potentially including Activision, to create an anti-competitive environment for gaming subscriptions. There's just one problem. Xbox's biggest competitor, PlayStation, has made it clear that subscription game services are not a business it particularly wants to be in, despite, kind of being in it. PlayStation has a couple of eggs in that basket, of course, but not all of them. They technically have 3 baskets: Plus Essential, Plus Extra, and PlayStation Plus Premium Unleaded, or whatever it's called. Literally nobody can remember the name of all 3. Jim Ryan couldn't do it if you dangled him over a piranha tank and said, "Hey, name the PlayStation Plus subscription tiers, Jimmy." Do it, Jimmy! Anyway, Sony's game subscription services offer access to a large library of games, but importantly, Sony will not make its huge AAA first-party games available on the service on day one of release like Xbox has been doing. So get ready to spend $70 on Spider-Man 2 or be prepared to wait a while for it to show up on Plus. That's because Jim Ryan is not a fan of the Game Pass business model, and according to him, he's not the only one. He claimed that, "I talked to all publishers and they unanimously do not like Game Pass because it's value destructive." Activision's own CEO, Bobby Kotick, yeah, that f***ing guy, also echoed Ryan's disdain for subscription services, saying, "I don't agree with the idea of a multi-game subscription service as a business proposition going forwards. When you make that much money, I can make fun of your voice. That's the law." What's interesting in the court's opinion is that Judge Corley really takes the FTC to task for not taking Kotick at his word regarding his disdain for gaming subscription services, saying Kotick cannot imagine a subscription service agreeing to the financial terms Activision would require to make it a financial win for Activision. She then delivers the haymaker to the FTC's argument that Activision might sell its games to subscription services. In sum, the FTC has not raised serious questions on whether the merger will probably substantially lessen competition in the game library subscription services market. This was a big win for Microsoft. To add insult to injury, thanks to Kotick's staunch disdain for gaming subscription services, the court actually bought Xbox's argument that putting Call of Duty on Game Pass was pro-competitive, saying, First, the merger has the pro-competitive effect of expanding access to Call of Duty. Furthermore, Dr. Carlton explains how adding Call of Duty and Activision content in general will actually lower costs for many game consumers and harm none. That line there, will lower costs for many game consumers, is the exact thing Kotick and Ryan are worried about. They're trying to preserve the classic buy-to-play business model where people continue to purchase individual games. If you remember, PlayStation were the first to formally push for $70 game prices this generation, and they want every penny of that. That's what Jim Ryan means when he says gaming subscription services are value destructive, because it potentially incentivizes gamers to wait for titles to come out on a subscription service, significantly lowering the amount of revenue a developer can receive for that player's access to the game. Jim Ryan and Kotick might actually be right. So for TV and movies, streaming services might not have been the best invention. They're just not as profitable as cable and DVDs were. According to IndieWire, Peacock, Disney Plus, and Max are all losing money, like Clark Griswold at a blackjack table.
I've lost $300 in 15 minutes.
As it turns out, the only real Nick Papageorgios turning a profit in streaming are Netflix and Hulu. Now, if you're saying to yourself, but gaming and movies are different, well, from a business perspective, they're more similar than you might think. Now, whether it be games, movies, or TV shows, it's all content vying for our attention, and its creators are in the same business of selling us that sweet, sweet content to consume in our spare time. History may not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. It seems Microsoft opened Pandora's Xbox, creating a business that provides gamers access to a ton of games for a small monthly fee. No matter what the other gaming bosses think, like movie and TV streaming before it, that business isn't going anywhere, and they're gonna have to compete in it. So we've got one more relevant market to talk about before we get to the good stuff. You know, where the judge really takes the FTC down a peg or two. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the cloud gaming market real quick. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are watching this video right now and thinking, I don't play cloud games and I don't want to. Cloud gaming requires a near perfect internet connection for pretty unreliable results, and there's usually no actual sense of ownership of the game you're playing, which completely sucks if you're a game collector, be it physical or digital. And it's also probably one of the main reasons why Google Stadia hilariously bombed. Rest in peace, Google Stadia. The truth of the matter, though, is that cloud gaming is gonna be part of the gaming future and will likely only get better and more reliable, whether or not you're into it or not. Xbox has placed a big bet on the cloud with xCloud, but they're not the only ones who understand the new service's potential. Jim Ryan also acknowledged it, saying, I would say that cloud technology will become a meaningful component of how gamers access games between 2025 and 2035. You know, somewhere in that decade. So to Microsoft, growing its cloud gaming service is about much more than just gaming. It's about Microsoft taking on a much larger competitor, drumroll, Amazon. While the Sony vs. Xbox console war was a battle of the gods, Microsoft's cloud computing war with Amazon is truly a clash of titans. 4 companies control 67% of the world's cloud infrastructure. Microsoft, with its Azure cloud, is in second place with 20% of the cloud computing market, behind Amazon, which has 32%. And if you're wondering where Sony is in all of this, well, it's an Amazon customer. I know we're all Amazon customers, but they're really Amazon customers because all of PS5 multiplayer servers are on AWS. The point is, growing Microsoft's cloud business is one of the company's key goals, and as you could have guessed, xCloud, like all of Microsoft's cloud, is powered by Microsoft Azure, the exact business it's trying to grow. So Microsoft's biggest defense against the FTC's cloud gaming market argument isn't whether or not cloud gaming is a relevant market, it's its recent 10-year deals with other cloud gaming markets like NVIDIA, GeForce Now, and Boosteroid. Judge Corley seemed to agree with Microsoft's cloud deals in court, and she doubled down in her opinion, saying, before the merger, there is no access to Activision's content on cloud streaming services. After the merger, several of Microsoft's cloud streaming competitors will, for the first time, have access to this content. The merger will enhance, not lessen, competition in the cloud streaming market. So interestingly, even with all these cloud gaming deals, Microsoft can still work toward its goal of increasing Microsoft's cloud business. In the UK's CMA report on the Microsoft Activision deal, it notes that concerns have been raised about Xbox games only having Windows versions, meaning to run them in a cloud-based service, the games would have to be run on Windows-based servers. You know, like the ones Microsoft sells. So not only did Microsoft manage to outflank the FTC with those deals, but they still could potentially grow their streaming business even though gamers wouldn't be streaming Microsoft first-party games through xCloud. All right, so we made it through the relative markets the Microsoft Activision deal could affect. Get yourself a snack or a drink, you've earned it. But that was only part of the FTC's argument. It also argued Microsoft could and would use all its might to engage in anti-competitive practices. Okay, so listen, this is where the court's opinion turns into a real bloodbath. The judge really takes the FTC to task here, and it's in this section of the opinion that provides some of the juiciest quotes.
It is out of sheer morbid curiosity I'm allowing this freak show to continue.
All right, so before we get into it, you first have to understand what the FTC's goal was here. They had to successfully argue that Xbox would engage in anti-competitive behavior, which could occur by withholding or degrading Activision content from its competitors in the relevant markets that we all talked about earlier. Now, obviously, the most extreme anti-competitive measure that Microsoft could take would be keeping Activision games like Call of Duty away from its competitors. Call of Duty is back, just like it is every year.
This is capture or kill.
But Microsoft knew what it was being accused of here, so even before it stepped into court, it started making 10-year deals with console makers and cloud gaming companies to put its content, like Call of Duty, on as many platforms as possible. Now, while the court agreed with the FTC, saying the court accepts the combined firm would have the ability to foreclose because it would own the Call of Duty franchise, it also acknowledged that the FTC was short on proof, saying the court finds the FTC has not shown a likelihood of success on its claim that the combined firm would have an incentive to, and thus probably would, foreclose Call of Duty from Sony PlayStation. Just like big wordy stuff for, you know, the stuff that like fanboys were worried about. The judge's opinion then spends the next 5 pages, 5, laying out reason after reason after reason why the FTC was wrong and that Microsoft has no incentive to withhold Call of Duty. She details everything from the deals it made to put COD on more platforms to Microsoft's interest in Activision's mobile games, which, by the way, brings in like half of Activision's total revenue, to the complete lack of internal documents to suggest Microsoft wanted to make COD exclusive, to the potential reputational harm that Xbox could suffer from being the asshole that makes COD exclusive.
You're not wrong, Walter. You're just an asshole.
And like, I don't know, that sounds bad, right? Well, it gets worse for the FTC. During oral arguments, the FTC tried to argue that Xbox's actions after the ZeniMax deal were telegraphing its future intent. Once Xbox acquired ZeniMax's developers like Bethesda, Arcane, and Machine Games, it moved to make their new titles like Starfield, Redfall, and the upcoming Indiana Jones game Xbox exclusive. The FTC argued that withholding those games and potential future ones is anti-consumer, but PlayStation's own Jim Ryan, who had a ton to gain if the FTC's case succeeded, didn't help twist the knife in this matter, saying, "I don't like it, but I fundamentally have no quarrel with it." So what the FTC defines as withholding is completely out of touch with the reality that is operating a video game platform. Console manufacturers have been withholding games for decades. They're just called exclusives.
Is that it?
No, there's more.
Not only did the judge's opinion call out the FTC for relying too much on Jim Ryan, who didn't even help them here, but skewered them for their selective perception, saying, while the FTC asserts Microsoft's 2014 Minecraft acquisition is not relevant to how it will treat Call of Duty, it insists Microsoft's 2021 acquisition of ZeniMax is predictive of how the combined firm will behave. And if you're sitting here thinking,
He's already dead.
Well, the court still had one more truth bomb to drop in its opinion, and it might be the trials if the glove don't fit moment.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Judge Corley's opinion took the FTC to task because the economic model made by the FTC's expert witness, Harvard University economist and professor Dr. Robin Lee, which was supposed to prove that the economic benefits of making Call of Duty exclusive outweighs the cost, was built on dubious assumptions. Professor Lee claimed that the number of affected users, the gamers who would actually buy an Xbox to play COD, was about 20% of people who previously bought COD on PlayStation. Lee also acknowledged that the 20% number wasn't calculated, just picked. Okay. Professor Lee even testified that using his model with a slightly lower input of 2.5% to, say, 17.5% changed the economics so that the very same model shows Xbox losing money by making COD exclusive. And when Professor Lee's model was criticized by Microsoft and their expert witness Dr. Carlton, they kind of just rolled over. The FTC chose not to challenge or even address Dr. Carlton's identification of material flaws in Professor Lee's share model. The criticism thus stands unscathed and persuasive. The opinion goes on to say, Dr. Lee's opinion suffers from several additional weaknesses. He simply assumed a concession rate for his model that would make exclusivity profitable. But there is no evidence to support that assumption. That was the whole ball game.
I offered you a chance and you blew it!
Seriously, this whole case was predicated on the fact that Microsoft could gain an unfair competitive advantage by withholding games like Call of Duty, and the FTC's own expert inadvertently proved that withholding the game isn't in Microsoft's economic interests.
Jordan fades back, swoosh, and that's the game!
For all those reasons, Judge Corley ruled in Microsoft's favor, saying, for the reasons explained, the court finds the FTC has not shown a likelihood it will prevail on its claim this particular vertical merger in this specific industry may substantially lessen competition. To the contrary, the record evidence points to more consumer access to Call of Duty and other Activision content. The motion for a preliminary injunction is therefore denied. So when you add it all up, it makes sense why the FTC didn't win here. They either didn't understand the gaming space at all, or they were completely unprepared, or both. While the FTC tried to appeal the ruling, the Ninth Circuit Court denied it. So assuming Microsoft can please the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, aka the CMA, not the Country Music Awards, there could be nothing standing in the way of this merger. So what do you think about the FTC, Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, PlayStation, Bobby Kotick, Call of Duty, Cloud Gaming, Candy Crush, mobile game, trial of the century, of the year? Do you think the FTC is right in trying to break up the merger, or is Xbox buying Call of Duty fair game in a world where video game exclusives like Spider-Man exist everywhere? Let us know in the comments below, and for all things video games, stick with IGN. How the hell did I make it through a video this long about video games and court cases and I didn't say the words Phoenix Wright?
Objection!
Not once. Not even once.
Take that!
The whole time. He's like the video game lawyer.
Take that!
The guy